Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar here this evening. My name is Jacob Grace, and I'm Outreach Coordinator with the Savanna Institute. And we're very excited to be doing our first virtual field day of our field day season. And we are going to be getting a tour of Brambleberry Farm with Darren Bender Beauregard and his family. So without any further ado, I guess I'll just mention that this meeting is being recorded, where we have the Zoom meeting, and then we're also streaming this through Facebook, and it will be available after tonight for people who want to go back and watch it. So if you have any questions for Darren or for his family here, all lined up and ready to talk to us, you can chat with us through Zoom or through Facebook Live, and we'll try to get your questions answered. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I'll go ahead and mute myself and turn it over to Darren.
All right. Well, I'm going to let Spree do the welcome and introduction.
Yeah.
So.
I'm Spree. This is Darren, Viola, Eleanor, and Sylvia. That's all right. So we started Brambleberry Farm about 16 years ago. We started out doing annual produce for a few years and then slowly transitioned into nursery stock. So at this point, nursery stock is our main farm enterprise. We do fruit, nut, and berry plants for sale, with a focus on things that are adapted to permaculture gardening. We also have quite a lot of Homestead Enterprises going on the side, but the nursery stock is our main business. Well, we've got to keep it short.
Well, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So the land is, well, we have about how many open acres? About 6 open acres.
No, probably about 7 or 8.
And about 20 wooded acres. And it's land that I grew up on. My parents still live down the hill from us. And that's fine. So I've had the opportunity to see this land for over 40 years in all of the changes that it's gone through, and that history has been important to us here, developing our own systems on the land.
Well, one of Spree's other enterprises, which isn't necessarily farming related, is making wooden cutting boards and utensils, which he sells at holiday markets in the local cities in the fall and winter right before Christmas. So Michelle asked us to bring some of these out to show, and you can kind of see some of her work using all local wood species and a lot of different unusual woods. And yeah, not the typical straight, perfect hair cutting blade, which I think is a lot nicer. So, yeah. So, yeah.
Yep.
So, all right.
I'll let Darren take you through the rest of
it. All right, gotta go. All right. So we're about to go into the actual nursery here, and as Spree said, that's our primary farm income. We used to sell vegetables and pastured pork, and we transitioned out of that to be out to focus on the nursery, which has been our best kind of time and money enterprise we've had. It's set up real basically in nursery benches with shade cloth and structures. We have some different species of grapevines growing up to the wire to help aid in the shade of the structures. We might in 3 or 4 years be able to just take the shade cloths off and let the grapevines do some of the shading, enough shading on their own. We also happen to have some of our movable animal coops here. Esprit has been busily building a rabbit enterprise since last year, and this is just one of the 3 movable rabbit hutches that we have that allow them to eat the grasses and clovers and let their poop fall through, and we just move them on once or twice a day. A little automatic water in there and little hoppers for some pellets. So they are Rex, tri-colored Rex, and she's also doing an experiment with a crossing satin. They're a nice meaty conformation, and they have a really good pelt as well. And this is our sad little, almost a dozen, ideally had a dozen hens in it. We are about at the end of the cycle. We let our hens have a 1.5-year cycle for the most productive egg production, and then we butcher the hens and have wonderful stewing hens in our freezer. So we've had animals get a lot of ours earlier this spring, and so we're down to 6 or 5 now, 5 hens, which isn't near enough eggs for our family. But it's a simple movable coop that we've liked. This is one of our first designs we did, and we really move it. So you can kind of see some of these big wheels, and you can move it pretty easily. One person, 5 by 10, and yeah, I'll keep moving away from that. We can maybe swing through the nursery here and sort of get a sense. Our nursery set up with these benches and shade structures, and then we also, between each bench and structure, we have a bed with some of the plants that we sell. So we have physical examples for people to see right near the plants they're going to buy. We can say, this is what a Jefferson hazelnut is going to look like when it's, 5 or 6 years old in a very happy location. Got lots of nice hazelnuts this year, nice and big. We've not seen any blight on this yet. So this row has some hazels. This side has some muscadine grapes, which are doing really good for us. They've made it through a lot of the winters that they've been here. And then kind of coming out here, some cherry, there's some red raspberries, some different service berry cultivars. We have some various herbs and support plants throughout. Some of our larger grafted fruit trees are over here for people that want larger plants, but mostly we focus on smaller plants. It's more affordable for people to get more plants. It's easier for us to keep them all watered, and it seems like a win-win. Personally, I prefer planting smaller plants. I feel like they establish better. And we can walk up through here. I think we can maybe move up through. This is one of my favorite ones, actually. And those of you that know it will, smile. Be smiling right now because it's a Girardi dwarf mulberry. Looks just slightly ratty now because we had 2 consecutive freezes just as new growth was coming out. So we have almost no berries on this, and 0 berries on any of our other mulberries this year. But it's a perfect small dwarfing mulberry that only gets about 6 to 8 feet tall. We have another one that's about 12 years old, and it's only 6 to 7 feet tall now. Wonderful plant, very long bearing season, really long, super tasty berries. Most likely a Morris rubra and alba hybrid, the way the leaf shape is. You'll see various water tanks throughout the property. We run our farm completely on rainwater. I'll talk a little more about that in a later segment after we go out and see the Silvopasture system. But we don't have town water that comes out to us, and we don't have any wells on the property. So we decided to just make do with rainwater, and we've just been building that system over the years. And you'll hear more about that in a little bit. But you'll see a few of those tanks as we're walking through. We're coming now to one of my favorite places, which is our newest greenhouse that we've built. We built a barn and greenhouse combination. We finished it 2 years ago, maybe 3. My sense of time gets a little weird the older I get. And we have a lot of our greenhouses are attached to a structure, and we found that having a back wall that's attached to a structure with insulation in this case, and the other one we have a stone wall, it just really helps buffer the temperature in the winter time. And both of our attached greenhouses, neither of them get down below 34, 33 degrees in the winter. They both have a lot of water as thermal mass to help regulate that temperature. This one is twin wall polycarbonate and a pipe greenhouse frame with some cedar to help things out here as purlin. Here's some more of these tanks, and again, I'll talk a little more detail about these later, but these are just your standard IBC totes you can pick up in any city or nearby. Up here, I'll talk a little bit about this out in our Silvopasture, so it's good to get a shot of this. These are two 850-gallon tanks that are very tall, up on a loading dock that we got in an auction. And these gravity feed out to our field and our Silvopasture, so we have water for our livestock and potentially to water plants just with gravity at any given time. This point is higher than any point in our field on the top of the dock. Then want to say, not everything's peachy here. One of my favorite things is when farmers share their failures as well as their successes. And right now you're looking at about 400 apple grafts that I did this year, that for the third year in a row, we have just watched them shrivel up and die. And we are still trying to figure out what's going on. It has something to do with the weak roots from the stooling bed produced apple rootstocks. And we're not the only ones having this problem. Two other nursery friends of ours are having a similar problem. It seems to do with just the apples. It seems like our pears do okay, seedling cherries, that sort of thing. But the grafts have fused, but the grafts will fuse and start budding out, and they'll even callus, and then the thing just sort of starts dying from the bottom up. And so it's a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted soil mixing, a lot of wasted everything, and it's very frustrating, but part of farming. So I don't want to try and pretend that it's all successes. There are a lot of subtropical plants and tropicals in here because it's another one of my little hobbies to just collect and see. There's a mountain papaya, there's a hoja santo or mamo, the black pepper relative with a root beer tasting leaf. There's some grafted avocados, some guavas, there's a little sad mango, and a number of different banana cultivars. But this one right here that has a cluster of bananas is called Cali Gold. It's a sport of dwarf Orinoco, and is by far the most cold hardy fruiting banana we've had in the greenhouse. The leaves stay green all winter, while the other bananas, you can see they lose a lot of their leaves and barely come back through. This one started flowering last fall, set bananas, and the bananas went through the entire winter with temperatures regularly getting down below 40 here. I think this is probably a winner if you wanted to. But if I keep moving, there's pineapple guavas here, which Jasmine told me are fabulous.
Jasmine and Darren, it looks like we're losing you a little bit. I don't know if you guys have gotten away from your internet source. Hopefully we'll get you back here in just a second.
We might be back on here.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Great, okay. I'm really sorry. I'm not sure what happened, but I could hear you all. It sounds like you couldn't hear me, but we completely lost your video. But
that's what we gathered. So we were trying to just talk. We can go back. Should we go back to where we left off and start there?
Yeah, I think whatever works best for you. We lost your video around the banana tree.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm thinking that it may have been the metal in the barn, but
okay.
We normally get a pretty good Wi-Fi signal in there, but we'll see. So I'll just start. Pardon all the redundancy. I'm not sure. I'm assuming, did everybody hear the whole spiel about the setup of the Silvopasture, or should I go over that again? I don't have to hear that twice, but I don't mind.
We did hear pretty much everything, but yeah, if there's anything you want to show, we've got the video back now. Perfect.
So assuming everybody heard what I said earlier, you can see here, this is the first row of our 60-foot spacing tree rows. These are some peaches, plums in this row. And I'll say that, we started out with the traditional tree fruit species. But then as we've watched and seen in earlier plantings and in our new plantings, it's just, there's so many challenges to growing sellable, marketable tree fruits of the traditional tree fruit species that are mostly native to Europe in our hot, humid, bug-infested southern Indiana land. And so in the meantime, I had been, bush hogging these fields once a year or so to keep hundreds of persimmon trees from growing up, because there has been persimmons here for years that have been bush hogged, and there's a massive root system that they just pop up almost everywhere. And I'll show you some of that when we get out farther. One section I hadn't mowed last year. And so I began to start thinking maybe I should let some of the persimmons come up in the tree rows and graft some improved cultivars onto those. And so that's what I've been doing. There's a number in this row. There's some as we'll go up here and see. And then we've also started planting some nut trees in between the fruit trees in these rows that will be the eventual overstory. So we're kind of not necessarily through purposeful planning from the very beginning, but we are creating sort of a successional tree row. And so in 20 years, most likely this will look more like pecan, heartnut, Persian walnut, and some chestnuts in the tree rows, and the fruit trees will mostly be dying out from shade, or maybe they'll be all mixed together. Maybe we'll have cut them down to release the canopy. So not deciding that. So I'd like to have realized I wanted to have more cards in my hand than, or in my deck, I guess, to play with, to pull into my hand if I needed to. So they're planted way too close together, but I can choose which I'm going to keep. And so yeah, you can see the cows down here. They're Dexter cows, cattle. The 3 heifers. We lost our 2 nice mama cows last year to ehrlichiosis, a tick-borne illness that came in on some cattle from Texas in our area that I did not know about until they were both gone. And I'm not quite sure what our plan is for that. I hope we just don't see it any more of it for now. Yeah, about to hit the pigs here. We moved them from the barn where they kind of rooted up the cattle bedding pack for the winter. And now they're probably sleeping, being very calm little piggies. You can see them right over here. Right there. So they're having a good time rooting up all the sod and just completely killing this little area here. This cedar tree we want to take out anyway, so if they damage all of its roots, it does not matter. We'll probably cut it down when they're done with this and plant a cover crop in here, move them to another section. Right here is a good example of grafting persimmon onto a native persimmon rootstock. This is a cultivar from a friend of mine who lives just 20 minutes south of here. His name is Don Compton. Many of you that know anything about persimmons know Don. He has bred some amazing varieties of persimmon. And this one is one he called DEC Goliath. It was his favorite persimmon, at least at the time that I took signwood from it. I believe it's a Miller cross. I'm not totally sure. He has a lot of really good Miller crosses. And this thing makes just really nice sized American persimmons, amazing pulp, and they don't splat when they hit the ground. So this is been a really great grower. It's loaded with fruit this year. One of the few things we have that make fruit. Almost everything else, if I'm decided to drop off. Almost everything else, we lost all the fruit from a double whammy freeze situation that many of you in the Midwest were familiar with. Pretty rough year for tree fruit. But persimmons are looking pretty good. I've seen some black walnuts from the black walnut trees. I have a very few apples. So, and as you see, here's a good example. These are some of the tree cages I was talking about. So here's our main tree rows. And then in between at the 30-foot mark, we have at a much wider spacing, tree cages built from 3 T-posts and cattle panel that's bent and then wired together. Jasmine, our apprentice, built many of these in our first week or 2 here. Got really good at it. And they have been proven to be sturdy enough for cattle to rub on them as a scratching post and keep them from completely annihilating the tree that's inside. So a great strategy in my mind for a pretty long-lasting and durable tree cage for trees planted in the middle of the pasture. You can see right here, I guess I was talking a little bit about our grazing, rotational grazing. We don't do mob grazing. We're not quite that intense, for better or for worse, but I do try to leave a lot of residue. You can see in this area, the cows trampled a lot of stuff. I don't make them eat it clean and lick the soil before I move them. So this is ideal. They're eating the best parts of the plant that are more nutritious for them, and they're leaving a lot of residue for the soil to digest. And then the crowns of the plant aren't nipped to the ground where they take longer to recover. So this was just moved out of here this morning to where they were at, where you just saw them. And spanning over to here is that would be the next paddock in their rotation. I may be moving them over to another part of the property, but you can see all the white clovers in full bloom, setting seed. This almost has too much clover. I've never thought that I would say that, but we've never seen any bloat in our animals. I don't have any worry about that. It's just that there's a lot, the grasses are where your carbs and energy are, and we do grass-fed beef and don't feed any grain to our cattle. So to get them fattened up and ready to breed or ready for butcher, it's nice to have maybe a little more grasses than what we're seeing here. But it's also nice to have a lot of free nitrogen. I might just peek real quick out here. I could show you those persimmons coming up everywhere. And we can see the Che or Chinese melonberry tree, which has been a total winner for us. This one's going to have a lot of fruit this year again. Did not get affected by the freeze, which is kind of nice to know. This is grafted onto Osage orange to keep it a single trunk tree. This is a fruit popular in Asia, parts of Asia, and it looks just like a mini Osage orange. It's about the size of like a sweet cherry when it's ripe in the fall and turns into like a dark pink reddish color. They're seedless, juicy, and they taste literally like fake watermelon candy. And everybody that has tried them that I've fed them to just loves them, and they seem to have no pest or disease problem. And birds don't even eat them, which always makes me a little suspicious. Birds eat all the good stuff. So they're a wonderful tree, very low care. They're a great edible landscaping tree because the leaves look just clean and nice all summer. They turn a golden color in the fall, and then the plant has kind of a natural zigzagging kind of growth habit that is a really nice winter tree form. So that's just one in our tree rows there. Right behind it is a grafted persimmon. That's Knightsville. And you can see over here, coming out here, don't really need to, and I hope we don't run out of our Wi-Fi booster, but maybe Jasmine can stand there and I'll just walk through. You can kind of see over here, there's no trees coming up in the pasture, and over there, there's a whole bunch. And those are all of those trees are persimmon root suckers. So if I wanted to, I could graft onto every single one of those and have a really dense persimmon forest, but then I wouldn't have any pasture. So we'll leave the silvopasture for now and head back and talk about some rainwater harvesting that we do here at our place. So we were very lucky. Well, I was told not to talk while I walk, so maybe I'll shut up for a little bit. And we can stop real quick here to see the solar fence charger. This has been a trusty system for us. We got it from Tenco, and it's just a 30-watt solar panel with a 3-joule DC charger, and then a deep cycle marine battery. And this thing seems to really hold charge through even wet times of the year and stuff like that, well, at least with a single wire cattle fence. I'm not sure it could keep up with a, but well, I guess we should show this too, even though it's messy. This, real briefly, this is kind of a new system we're starting, and it's kind of a mess, so it's the reality of farming. But in these cages, there's a apple grafted onto Bud 9 dwarf fruit stock, and they're 5 foot apart, and we're trying like a high density apple system theoretically. I was hoping to have a mulch by now. And then on the other side over there, there is a similar setup with pears on OHF 333 rootstock. 5-foot spacing. We're going to sort of set up some trellises and see how apples do on bud 9 root dwarf rootstock compared to what is in our field are all on M111, which has done fabulous in our poor clay soil. But I'm curious to see if there'll be a difference. I guess we didn't get this. Did we see these bunnies before? These are some of the bunny pens for breeding stock when a spring needs to keep some separated out for breeding purposes. Which he has some more stationary pens that aren't moved every day. So, all right. So, I'm not sure you're able to see it if she stands up there, but we have a really weird homemade gutter system that we're trialing on this barn. Gutters have been like one of the weakest links in our rainwater harvesting system. It seems like we can't get gutters that are heavy duty enough to not just break down with snow loads. We have snow bars on our roof to keep it going, but every winter it seems like we get the gutters kind of splitting down. So we tried to make this out of the 4-inch corrugated black pipe that we kind of split in and then worked it onto the roof. And it holds sort of a gap up and the natural leaf block, and it's never going to tear. So we're kind of curious to see how that'll hold up long term. It's a totally different and weird system, and I guess you didn't see it earlier, and maybe you were hearing it, but that is a semi-trailer where we kind of got knocked out of video. It's the refrigerated semi-trailer that we keep all of our plants in during the winter to keep them from freezing and thawing so much. So this is the back half of this roof. This is the barn and greenhouse structure. The back half collects and runs into those tall tanks. Oh, and I should show you those real quick. We have time. Those tanks, I was talking about these feeding into those tanks that are on that loading dock. We buried a line all the way out along this access lane in our Silvopasture where we have every other row has a quick connect valve. It's a Plastin quick connect. Those of you grazers probably are very familiar with them. That we have insulated like pavers that we keep on top of them over the winter and we're not using them so animals don't fall in. But right here we have male and female at the bottom, and this is a male quick coupler that we can just pop in any kind of watering device we want. And if you want to pan over there and show the little field draggable watering system, that's just got a float valve on it, and I can just pull it anywhere I want to follow the cows. Right now it's got a Y on it so that the pigs can drink. They've got a little drinker nipple that's hooked up to it. So as those of you that have pigs know, they'll just dump their water if you have it panned, or just roll in it, turn it into a mud pit. And so wallow, that's the word I'm looking for. So we have a little drinker nipple that's kind of like valved down so they can't just like sit on it and like let a huge pond form. Seems to be working really well for them so far. So that's kind of part of the rainwater system, is that we can get gravity fed water out to our field and our animals, even if electricity's off, no matter what. It's kind of a nice backup system, which we're starting to think about more as we build things. How can we build things that will work even if we don't have all the amenities we have? And right here on this barn, we let the beam run about 5 foot out, that we're going to probably mount a trolley and chain hoist on so that we could have a platform that could lift things up to the second story of the barn in the future just by hand if we want hay or equipment that's heavier, too heavy to get up the stairs, that sort of thing. So we just think about these things that are, what if things did kind of shut down and we didn't have access to electricity to pump? What could we do? And then we have a few systems that are kind of redundant. There's a little frost-free, energy-free water drinker. It's a lap energy-free drinker for the cows and sheep potentially. That's also hooked to that gravity-fed system, so that gives them unfrozen water all winter without any electricity. We do have a mains charger that plugs into our home AC electric because it's just nice to have a backup system if your battery goes down or things like that. So, they're a great little Pasquale tractor. I wonder if anybody knows much about those. They're pretty interesting little things. And then the rainwater system. So that half of the roof collects and goes into the tall tank. The front half of the roof of the barn and also the roof of the greenhouse, they all collect, and we'll go look at this here for a second. They all collect into the greenhouse tanks that are lower down. So there's a gutter that we put on the front sort of hip of the greenhouse. It was kind of difficult to mount it there, but we sort of designed it and engineered it to do that. So this gutter, I mean, you can kind of see it kind of goes all the way back. You can see the pears in it because this one has problems too. And anyway, this goes into here, and then the downspout goes into the first tank in here inside the greenhouse. And those tanks are all connected underneath these concrete pathway pieces, all connected together. They all function as one whole tank. It goes around the bend, it comes back to these tanks, and then that last tank right here, this tank has a draw pipe that goes over here to a pump and pressure tank system that draws the water through the pump, pressurizes it in the pressure tank so that it's not wearing up the switch on the pump. And then we have that hooked to different ports in the greenhouse for pressurized watering. That's also what feeds that mist system over there. We're pretty low on water. We were just in a pretty nasty drought period and got a huge downpour last night. So we're getting a little more water in, but the gutter was sort of spilling over and didn't get as much as I would have liked. So. This tank out here, kind of interesting. So we have one set of tanks in that system. The bottom row, those tanks hold 4,300 gallons of water. The two 850-gallon tanks hold 1,700. So it's right around 6,000 gallons that's just in the greenhouse there. And that's a totally inside system. This one is outside. This is a 3,000-gallon standard poly tank that is buried about 3 feet into the ground, which is all the deeper you want to bury them so they don't collapse without water in them. And then I wrapped some thin insulation around it and then clad it with some old metal from the roof of our barn. And the purpose of cladding it is a number of reasons. My main goal was to protect that polyethylene from UV degradation. Because, the tanks only last 10 or so years in full sun before they start breaking down and crack and getting brittle. So it's going to prolong the life of that. It's a lot, but it also keeps it dark and keeps algae from growing in that tank. So this water is going to stay a little cooler, stay a little cleaner because of that. And then this has its own pump and pressure tank system that's in a little buried box that we can access. And so it's got its own system that we plug into our house outlet, and it has a little bit lower pressure because it's a smaller, cheaper system. Only gets about 30 psi, so we can't water quite as fast. But we do still water all of our plants by hand. We've considered doing an automated system, and every year I'm thinking maybe we should switch to that. And it's hard to think about not being able to water certain things more and other things less, and have to balance all that out. And so we continue to water by hand, working for it. Then our last water collection, and this collects off the front half of our roof of our house and then the whole greenhouse roof there. And it's a really simple, this one has been the most, there's no screens or anything, so we are going to get more debris in it, but it just goes straight into the opening of the tank. It's just an open gutter going into the open top of that tank with a kind of a shield over top that I can unscrew if I need to access it. But it's just, the water just never overflows this gutter system for some reason, but all of our other ones seem like they break down. Not quite sure why. Then our last system is what our household is hooked to, and it is just 2,000-gallon septic vaults, a concrete vault, and we won't go down in there because I'm sure you'll get cut out down there, but we can at least peek in the doorway. We set up 2 of those septic vaults that each hold 1,000 gallons. To frame to be 2 walls of a buried root cellar structure. There's a drain down the middle of the root cellar so it doesn't fill up with water. It's actually tied into our house foundation drain. And we keep, some of the sensitive plants in here in the winter. And then we have refrigerators with cyan wood in them, and some meat in the freezer portion in here right now. There's nothing much else going on here. But it's a fair cement roof, which I'll never do again, but it is working well. It just was a ridiculous amount of work trying to smear mortar up above your head and having to drop on your face. So this just collects off the back half of our roof. And so since we started our other storage systems, we have a total of around 11,000 gallons storage, which seems to be a good amount for what we're doing. But in a severe drought, I think we would run out watering all the plants that we do. That's the major use of water. But since we started having specific tanks for our agricultural uses, we have never run out of, or even begun to run out of water in our household system. So really, we just don't use that much water. And it seems like 2,000 gallons is a nice number for our family. This just collects directly into those tanks for now. I'd like to put some kind of a filter primary flush system, but you know, I might have it someday. So I think that's it for the farm part of the tour. They did want us to talk a little bit about the straw-bale house. I don't know what time it is. Are we 10 till 9? I'll talk very briefly about our house, and then I can field some questions because we had a little blip. Oh, yes. Before we do questions, we want to hear from Jasmine. So this house is it's a straw bale wall stacked onto a concrete bond beam. You can see out here that is sitting on a compacted rubble trench foundation that has a drain underneath of it. I don't need to. A non-cementitious plaster on our outside walls, which all the books said would work if you have big overhangs, but it doesn't work when you have driving rain from the west. And so on my own, I just decided to mix in a little bit of Portland cement and then replaster. We haven't gotten down to this part yet, but you can see above, that is the new plaster that has Portland cement in it. We put it all around the rest of our house, and it holds up to driving rain. It just doesn't wash down the clay portion like the rest of it. The clay for this we got out of our foundation dig from our soil. We bought concrete sand and the coarse sand that we had in our area, and then mixed chopped straw that we chopped with the flail mower, and mixed all that in a big mortar mixer, and put it on by hand. So the last coats we used trowels, and it's been a great, very well insulated structure. We burn about 1.5 cords of firewood each winter, which is about a quarter of what most people in our area burn. And then we're keeping this house above 65 at all times. So it's not like we're just, staying that and we're hardly burning any wood, just, shivering it out all winter. Very comfortable, and we've been very happy with it. We built the entire house with doors and windows we found at Habitat Restore or at auctions, and many salvage materials. And then the wood is almost all from our property. All of it is from Southern Indiana, very local. We got it off local sawmills if we didn't mill it ourselves. And the house cost us around $20,000 total in materials. Our labor is not included in that. So I think I'll cut it at that for now, and I'll try and hold this phone gadget for Jasmine. I don't know where you want to. You're gonna be there with elderberries in the background, or?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. All right.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching. I've been asked to share a little bit about my experience here at Brambleberry. I'm their apprentice for the summer, and I want to send a thank you out to the Savanna Institute for all the great work that they're doing, and partnering and connecting with agroforest farms, who are then giving us aspiring agroforest farmers the opportunity to learn hands-on. And so I learned about Brambleberry Farm actually listening to a podcast about permaculture design and agroforestry. And really, Darren and Esprit just were apparent superstars in the field and just had a lot of experience. And it's one thing to read about agroforestry and learn from farmers on podcasts and through YouTube, but it's certainly a unique experience to actually get to be on a farm working beside a mentor. So it's really been a dream come true having this opportunity. I've only been here for a couple months now. I started back in May, and I've learned just so much in the short time that I've been here. I've gotten to work with Esprit on repairing and building rabbit and chicken tractors. They've taught me a number of different plant propagation techniques. I got to graft some fruit trees with Darren and learn about raising animals on the property, which is all really new to me. I now can build tree cages using those cattle fences and install those out in the Silvopasture. We also introduced a couple piglets last month, which has been really fun. So yeah, the wealth of knowledge that I'm getting is like mind blowing every day. I feel like I could go around and record everything that they're saying, because sometimes within a given sentence, I'm learning 5 or 6 new and different things about a single plant or how to propagate a certain plant, and caring for animals and all the animal nuances that take place when you incorporate them into an agroforestry system. I definitely want to mention how generous both of them have been with their time. Both of them have spent one-on-one time with me, teaching me different concepts, and been really generous with their accommodations here. I get to stay in this really rad off-the-grid cabin that's tucked away in the woods, and they let me bring my dog, which is really nice to have because I'm away from home, being here on the farm. There's just so much to learn that I really don't want the apprenticeship to end. So with that, me and my partner have applied for their farm incubator program, which is a year-long program where we will actually move here on the farm in the fall and spend the rest of the year just soaking up as much knowledge as we can from the two of them. So then we can go on to start our own agroforest farm and nursery with a lot more confidence. Thanks to this program by the Savanna Institute, and thanks to Darren and Esprit for really like taking me under their wing and being so humble and down to earth and friendly, and it's just a lovely experience. And I'm sure all of you out there have a lot of great questions for Darren, and he's excited to answer those. But I do encourage you all to come out to the farm and see it in person. Check out their incredible plant selection of edible perennials that they have, and I'm sure you'll leave learning something new, because both of them are just natural educators and mentors to everybody that they meet. So I'll turn it back over to Darren.
All right. I don't know where he goes sit out. Oh, God.
Animals.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. So I guess I'll just sort of stay here. Sit down if you want.
You can sit down too.
Yeah, good idea. All right, so I guess I'll wait for. Well, I'll go ahead and start answering some questions. I think Michelle or Jacob might. There's some way they're gonna get the questions to me, or maybe Jasmine has on the screen. Okay.
One of the questions was, what are the top profitable crops that you're growing, or plants that you're propagating, I believe?
Plants that we're propagating, I would say probably the one we had the most demand for the past 2 years has been pawpaws, grafted pawpaws specifically. The demand for those, I think that anybody in the nursery business is finding. It's just everybody is discovering pawpaws, and they all want one, and they know that the grafted trees are far superior to a lot of the seedlings. I do think that there's value in the seedlings, and we need to be planting seedlings from improved types and doing crosses to be able to find even better. But for now, if you have space for one tree and you want to make sure it's a good one, grafted, well, you can't have it. But one or two, the grafted is the way to go. So you have excellent fruit, and you know that you'll have that investment of time. That'd be our number one. Persimmons are starting to really catch up, and a lot more people are asking about the grafted persimmons. Um, and uh, they're a little trickier for me. They just don't seem to like to be in pot. We're still trying to figure things out. I'm finding this year looks like if they're in like a gallon pot, drafted for 1 year, and they do well, they kind of just stay kind of small. I put them into like a 2 gallon pot, and they just kind of skyrocket. They seem to be doing well. So I think, I don't know, it has something to do with keeping the roots a little bit bound for a year or so before you release the roots. And other than that, just, a lot of people that come here like berries and some of the things that are more familiar. We do sell a lot of apple trees. It's like people just think apple and they think a fruit tree. And the varieties we sell are all ones that are known to be disease resistant, at least some of the major diseases. So, and on a rootstock that is really appropriate for this area of heavy soils. We don't really have any other crops. Our nursery is our crop. We, like as Bree said earlier, we have a lot of Homestead Enterprises. So, we often have a steer we can butcher or two, and that's more than our family will eat. So we'll often sell one or sell half a beef to somebody. Then that will help pay for the hay for the cows for the winter, help pay for the butchering costs, that sort of thing. So right now we have 2 feeder pigs there. We'll only use, 1 pig, and we'll be selling the other one to friends and family as a whole or half pig. And, just kind of, these things are just kind of on a certain scale. I guess Esprit called it in one of the podcasts, homesteading with benefits, which is a great way to put it, where if you're just homesteading, it's just about making food for yourself, you're going to end up paying money for processing or feed or all this stuff that you're getting, unless you do it yourself and grow your own feed, of course. But there's kind of this little, if you just scale up just a tiny bit, you can kind of like get an economic advantage to that. So, and then berries and things like that, we have a lot of those planted out, mostly for trials to see how different varieties of species do in our area, but also for cutting material, scion seed, those sort of things that we can propagate from. And then we actually also get to have the fruits from them when they make fruit. And right now we have lots of blueberries. Looks like we'll have a few other things, but not many of the things we normally have. So yeah, I'd say that as far as crops are concerned, that's where we'd be at.
You touched on the next question, which was how do you protect your crops in the winter, but especially from critters?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And a lot of nursery people I know of have learned the hard way, including us, about leaving your potted stock out all winter. Some places will say, oh yeah, it's fine, it works for me. Well, it works sometimes with some species. Pawpaws, I guarantee you'll have almost 0% that'll make it through the winter. Grapes, kiwis, figs. A lot of these things, they just can't have their roots frozen and thawed all winter long like we have in our area. And maybe in farther north regions that get cold and stay frozen all winter long, they might be okay because they only freeze once, thaw once. But for us, for potted plants, we need to put them inside a buffered structure. The outside plants, we just, I don't know if we've been lucky or what, but we have always had an outside dog that's outside all night.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have not seen much browsing pressure from rodents or deer or rabbits. And one thing, we did see a little bit of deer damage. We had when Eleanor and Stubby are the twins were babies. Their first 2 years were kind of a rough 2 years, as you can imagine. And we decided to just sell off all of our animals at that time and just, mow the pastures once or twice that year. I just something needed to give. So I was also doing a big grass-fed beef project with about 65 head cow-calf operation down the road on a 235-acre property at that time. So I had a lot going on as well. But at that time, we had not had any animals moving around the Silvopasture system. And we noticed deer starting to come in and rub on the trees, browse things. Thankfully, the trees were large enough then that we weren't worried about them killing any trees. But it started once we took the domestic livestock out of the system.
Mm.
And ever since we put those domestic livestock back, we have not had any deer pressure. And so it's a harebrained theory. It's not really proven, but I have a feeling that something about rotationally grazed livestock and the smells and things they create, and maybe the electric fence that's moved around and it's kind of a kind of chaotic element, the deer just don't seem to want to come up and really do a lot of damage. We do see them walking across the fields every now and then, but not seeing any damage the past 5 or 6 years. So, but I would say a success I've heard other people have is with electric fences, a double wire fence, maybe a triple wire fence where the bottom one's not hot, but just visually, and electric shock kind of helps keep them out. And then also just the physical barrier. The guaranteed bet is physical barriers, like getting some welded wire, 4-foot welded wire at a farm store, and making little tree cages that you can tie to a stake. At the very least, that's a nice system to work. Tree tubes, I've heard a lot of good things about tree tubes. I've never used them on our place. I like to be able to see how the trees are growing and making sure rootstock is not suckering up, and I don't like wasps flying out of my face when I peek in. So I do think they're really an appropriate tool, especially for broad scale silvopasture plantings where there's no way you can keep electric fence on everything or keep livestock rotating through it. I think they're a wonderful tool. I just don't think they're for everybody. So.
All right. That's the last of the questions we got ahead of time.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
We
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, all right. So one of the questions from the very beginning is people would like to know where your farm is located.
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? We're in southern Indiana. It's a town outside of a town called Paoli, southern Indiana. We're about 1 hour south of Bloomington, Indiana, and we're 1 hour northwest of Louisville, Kentucky. So I think it's a perfect spot. We're right at the edge of the Hoosier National Forest. Lots of hills and valleys here. We're on a ridge top. We have Zanesville B series soils with an underlying dredge pan. And just we're surrounded by woods where we're at, but if you go a little bit to the north, it starts becoming more and more farm fields. Further south you go, you get right into the heart of the Hoosier National Forest. So, yeah. Great place.
All right. Next question. How do you spend your winters on the farm?
Oh, man. Every year at fall, I'm sure all the other farmers are laughing out too, because every winter you think, oh, this winter, here's the projects I'm going to get done. I'm going to have all this time. I won't have to be watering plants. I won't have to be grafting. I won't have to be doing this. And I'll get all this stuff done. And somehow the winter just flies by and your list just has hardly gotten a dent. So we spend our winters. If we do tree felling for any of Espree's woodworks, or for firewood, we try to do that in the winter because it's a lot more pleasant. Plus you can see the tree branches and canopy and know where the tree's going to fall a little better. We tend to do more of our building projects in the winter. So like the barn that you see, the greenhouses, a lot of that was done in the winter time. And then we have to kind of slow down on it in the spring, summer. And I'd like to say we take it a little bit more easy in the winter, but I'm not totally sure that's true. It probably is true. It's just there's a little less urgency to things in the winter. So, getting hay for the cows, rolling out a hay bale off the truck and putting a hay ring around it for them. We're now bringing it to the barn and putting it in that half hay ring. There's always, freaking water for the chickens, fresh water. I guess that's about how we spend it. We get to be outside here in the winter. I was telling Jasmine today, this is a region where it's often 40 degrees or above during the day in the winter. So most of the winter we can work outside comfortably. It's not much problem. Mud's about the worst problem we have in the winter here. So.
That sounds lovely. We can't do that in Wisconsin. What nursery or where do you get your trees? The majority of your trees.
I would say, so we order some of our bare root larger trees, like if we saw those in the nursery when we started. Those we're currently buying from White Oak Nursery. It's an Amish run nursery outside of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where my parents live. And they have really nice trees for a really good price and a lot of the varieties we want. So we order 100 or more of those to pot up just to have bigger trees for people. The rest of the things we mostly propagate ourselves via cuttings, seeds, or grafts. And currently we are still buying almost all of our rootstock in from Willamette Nurseries, who have just been an amazing company. They have amazing customer service. So I love those guys, and hope we got this apple rootstock issue. We want to set up our own stooling beds for apples and stock plants for cuttings of different clonal pear rootstocks and things like that. And we have a space picked out, and we know we're going to lay it out, and we just have not gotten the time to just do it. And so every year, okay, I guess we have to buy them again this year. So a few other things we'll buy, like this year we didn't have any good tip roots on our black raspberries, so we bought those in from White Oak Nursery as well, and also from Indiana Berry Company. Has pretty nice bare root stock. And we ordered some Chickasaw plums from Forest Healing Nursery. They were great to work with. And a few things from Porcupine Farm up in, are they in Minnesota maybe? Minnesota or Michigan, I forget. We got persimmons and the other things. So, but mostly we're trying to propagate as much as we can ourselves.
Mhm.
What was the tree called that was grafted on the Osage orange?
Oh, everybody pronounces it differently. A lot of the neck growers that I'm around pronounce it chi. It's spelled C-H-E, with the E has an exclamation, meaning an accent mark on it. So I call it che. I don't know what it's actually pronounced, but it's che, or it's also called Chinese melonberry. And Guy Ames with Ames Orchard, I think, is trying to call it zombie fruit. It looks like little brains. So, yeah, it's an excellent fruit. And the variety we have is a seedless che, which was originally from Edible Landscaping Nursery. But we also now have another new variety that was imported from Korea that is called Hwang Kum number 3. And it has grown like gangbusters. It's really winter hardy for us. And we're going to see this year if it is self-fertile. So it's lots of flowers on it and fruits right now. And we'll see if they stick around till fall or if they all fall off. But it is a tree that a lot of places say you need a male to pollinate with to get fruit on it. If you do that, you'll get seeds. And I've heard many people talk about these trees being a real nightmare if they get established on your property on their own roots. So the seedless che helps ameliorate that problem. And I have the one cultivar that a lot of nurseries say requires a male is Norris. And I have a Norris tree, and it makes fruit for me every year without a male. So I'm thinking the males are kind of unnecessary unless you want seeds in the fruit. And I think the fruits get a little bit bigger if they're pollinated and have seeds, but then you have seeds that you're crunching on. So. But they're a great fruit. They're a great, interesting fruit. I think they would sell wonderfully at farmers markets. So.
Awesome. So we have a few more questions. I'm pretty sure the Facebook Live ended because I think it only goes an hour, but
okay.
We'll continue doing question and answers for everyone who's on Zoom, and then we'll post this video later. What percentage of income comes from plant sales compared to all other sources of income?
I would say, I forgot to mention too that I do also do a fair amount of farm consulting, mostly for people that are homesteaders or small farmers that are setting up their farms. They pay me to come out and look at their map and their property, walk around with them and see what I can help them with. Very, very occasionally I'll do a design for somebody, but I hate doing designs for people because I think people should do their own design, because I'm never going to be living and working on your property. And I'm not going to know the best way to set things up. And so that's becoming a more significant part of our income the last maybe 3 or 4 years. I would say the plant sales would account for 60 to 70% maybe of the income. Espree's Woodworks would account for maybe like 15 to 20, and then consulting would be the rest. We don't really make any money from anything else. Our livestock, it's all pretty much goes back into hay or that sort of thing.
All right. What trees do birds favor in terms of eating the fruits or the nuts?
That's an excellent question. I wish more people asked that. I would say mulberries are hands down the most preferred berry species of any of the trees we grow. This year is very interesting. We're sitting under one of our mulberry trees that we sell called Viola's Lavender, named after our daughter, because we planted it when she was born. It was this random chance seedling, and it happened to have really amazing dark lavender fruit that's really thick clusters. And it's the first mulberry to ripen every year for us. And it's right outside our back door in our bathroom window. And the birds just know when this thing is ripening. And so we get very little fruit from it, unless we netted it one year and that helped. But we get a whole series of cedar waxwings, a bunch of warblers, few other birds that come through, and grosbeaks, rose-breasted grosbeaks come all at that time that they're ripening. And so we've basically given up and said, this is like our bird feeder tree, you know. If you want a bird feeder and you don't want to buy bird seed, plant a mulberry outside your back door. This one's not staining, so we don't get a total mess. And what's interesting this year, because the mulberries all got frozen hard 2 times in a row, almost none of them had any fruit on them. And so we saw all these same bird species coming this year and looking for these mulberries. They knew this tree was supposed to have mulberries. They just weren't finding them. So right and back over behind the camera is 2 gumi berries, which are autumn olive relative, that fruits in the spring and has a larger fruit. And they're not invasive that anyone that I've heard of has said like autumn olive can be. And this is the first year we didn't get hardly any gumi berries. Jasmine thankfully got to try a few. We got to eat a few. One of the cultivars of the gumi that we have here is called Carmine from Burnt Ridge Nursery in Washington, and it has a humongous berry. It's 2 or 3 times the size of the sweet scarlet and other gumis that we have. And it's interesting that that's the one the birds left alone the most. And I think it's because of the size of the berry. It's not a one-bite meal for them. So they bit on a few of them, but didn't pull the berries off. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Sour cherries, the birds tend to like those quite a bit, but not as much as a lot of people tell us they do. We've basically found that if we harvest them when they're ripe, we get most of them. But if we sit on our hands and don't really get out to harvesting them after they're ripe, you know, given it 3 or 4 days and they've been ripe on the tree, the birds will start moving in and start eating them. Blueberries are a big one. Our main blueberry planting, which is farther away, we do have a cage built over it that has bird netting on it to get most of our blueberries. I've not seen birds bother any of the nut trees so far, but we don't have any that are bearing really heavily yet. I've not seen birds bother persimmons of any type, khaki persimmons or the native Virginianas or the hybrids. Haven't seen them bother pawpaws. They bother peach trees occasionally, with just making peck marks in the fruit, and then that's when the fruit starts spoiling. And we've seen squirrels haul away a whole tree's worth of apples before they were ripe, in like a worker chain, hopping from one to the other, getting to the wood. And so they have a little quarter going. We've not noticed them hit the che fruit. They've not bothered aronia. They don't seem to bother our elderberries. We've lots of hazelnuts. I've not seen them eat our hazelnuts. So that's in a nutshell, I guess, what I just.
I really wish I could be upset at the squirrels for you, but I love them so much that I can't. They're just the cutest animals.
Yeah, the baby bunnies are even
Mm.
cuter.
Mhm.
That's true. Okay, that's a tough one. How do you deal with the toxins that come off the roof when you collect rainwater for your vegetables in your home?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of people ask that. I actually did a little bit of research for Brad Lancaster, who in Tucson, Arizona. We lived in Tucson, Arizona for a year before we moved back here as sort of a year of voluntary service that we did. And I would work with him a little bit to look into some of the toxins that might be on different roofing materials so he could include that in his book. And at that point, we didn't have nearly as powerful of an internet as we have now. And I'm sure there's different research out there, but at the time, it sounded like asphalt shingles are the worst. They do put algicides in the granules on top of the shingles, and then the tar itself has all kinds of nasty compounds that leach out. So that I'd be more concerned with. The studies that I was reading showed that enameled steel roofs were pretty inert. They did not leach much at all. Clay tile roofs were excellent, as you can imagine, and I forget, shake shingle roofs would probably be great, and thatch roofs would probably be great. You never know, you might get some like mycotoxins in there. Maybe the cedar, leaching cedar juice out of those shingles might not be good for you either. But we haven't worried so much about the actual roof, but we are aware that, a lot of particulate pollution, and we are in coal-fired electricity country. The reality is there probably is toxin levels in our water from collecting off of our roof. So what we do, and beyond just poisons or toxins, we worry about cysts and bacteria from bird droppings and that sort of thing, and dust as well. And so we just have a simple, like, universal canister filter with replaceable filter element under our sink that goes to our drinking and cooking water. We have a separate spigot for that, and all of that water goes through a 0.5 micron carbon block filter. They're about $12 a piece. We change them once or maybe twice a year, and that takes out any cysts or bacteria, and it supposedly takes out a lot of toxins as well. The interesting thing is that that brings up another reason I forgot to mention why we did rainwater. We are in a region that is completely riddled underneath all the ground with a karst limestone cave system called karst topography. And so all of our groundwater here is flowing through caves that are fed by sinkholes that are in the middle of farm fields. Traditionally, people around here, and they still do, use sinkholes as a natural dumping ground for trash, old batteries, motor oil, all these terrible things that then wind up right into the cave system, and then they end up killing a lot of sensitive species like cave salamanders, blind cave fish, things like that. There is technically kind of two levels, and the upper system is known to be really polluted. You do not want to drink or use that water if you drill a shallow well. You want to go down to the second level, which is supposedly theoretically clean. However, because our bedrock is limestone and sandstone, it's known that a lot of places cracks and fissures form where the top will mix down in with the bottom. You never know when or if that's going to occur. And we just thought, boy, that's a big unknown, and we could be getting the neighbors, like all the fertilizer runoff in their cornfield, in our household water, all of a sudden not know about it. And I feel like rainwater is a little more easily controlled, or a little more of a known entity possibly than groundwater in our area. We also felt like pumping water up from over 100 feet down would require more electricity and energy usage than pumping it from about 5 feet below the surface, which our cisterns are, maybe 2. So that was another decision. Another factor in our decision to do it.
A lot of weighing to weigh all the pros and cons.
Yeah.
How are you marketing and selling your rabbits? Have you seen growing demand for them? This person is looking to start raising them next year.
Good question. I should get a spree out here. Do you know what time it is? She's probably still. She'd be
It's
great.
8:24.
It's what?
8:24.
9:24 our time. She might be in there. I should almost go get her to answer that question. Let me get her. It'd be good to see if she's still putting the kids to bed.
And meanwhile, I will show the adorable little rabbits, the bunnies. Hello.
And tell us all of their names.
This is Penny. I actually don't know the other names. I don't think they name all of them, but this for sure is a favorite. She just had these babies probably 3-4 weeks ago, if that.
Oh my gosh. Yep. Contender for squirrels for sure.
Yeah, I can get some out. Let me get some out.
Oh, one's nursing.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, the kids will have multiple bunnies on their laps
All day long.
all day long.
We have names for them all. This is little one. They're like almost, they're a little bit past the perfect cute stage where their ears are a little bit shorter and that kind of thing. When they're real babies, they look like baby mice kind of. They're not quite as cute. I don't feel like when they're babies, but
I don't know.
they're still pretty cute. But
They're very cute.
so Esprit will be able to come out in a little bit. So maybe we can go to the next question and come back to that one. So
Aww, they're nursing.
yeah, they've been we've just begun marketing the meat from our rabbits so far. Thankfully, Indiana did pass legislation, I think last year or the year before, that allows the sale of rabbit, frozen whole rabbits, from on-farm sales or at farmers markets, as long as it says that it wasn't produced in an inspected processing facility. And we did not have that until I think last year. And we had it for chickens and other poultry, but not for rabbits. So that's kind of exciting. We have butchered at least one of every animal we have raised ourselves, except for the cows so far, which maybe we'll do that at some point. But the rabbits are just by far the most easy to butcher. I mean, they're just so quick to skin them. I mean, compared to chickens and plucking and fragile skin and all this stuff, they're just very quick. It's free is like very speedy at it. So it's a nice, fairly easy thing to do. I mean, it's always hard to have to kill your own animals, but knowing that it's a high quality protein that grows fast, and they are really getting a lot of their diet from forage. Here comes Esprit. I'm going to give a seat to her. So, I don't know, maybe you should repeat the question once Esprit got here. So.
Absolutely. Welcome, Esprit. Thank you for coming out and sharing your knowledge with us.
Sure.
So the question is, how are you marketing and selling your rabbits, and have you seen a growing demand for them? This person is looking to start raising them next year.
Yeah. Well, we have just gotten, I just got rabbits last summer, and we haven't really started selling any to speak of yet. I've been building my herd and feeding the family with the rabbits that we have. But in terms of, well, we have marketed the rabbit meat in one single post on Facebook.
We sold
So
one
far.
single rabbit.
We sold one single rabbit out of that. So we sold a couple to Airbnb.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to talk about that.
Yeah.
My brain come
Oh
out
yeah.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Airbnb.
Someone
We have
asked
a
about
little
it.
cabin in the woods. Yeah, but with the food insecurity that people have been feeling, especially with COVID, rabbits have actually been a very hot item in terms of breeding stock. And you can't, all of the cage wire at the feed stores is off the shelves, and you can't, it's hard to find breeding stock anywhere right now. People are definitely into meat rabbits at the moment.
I think was part of the question. Well, I think the person was saying they were going to be getting into them. as an enterprise possibly next year. If you have any advice or some learnings, you've had some hard learnings with maybe the pastured pens. If you could talk about the pastured pens, that's when it's just really still in its invention phase of how to do pastured movable pens.
Pastured rabbits. Yeah.
So you have like 3 different styles.
Yeah, well, I would go. It's starting to get dark now. We could go actually look at the different rabbit tractors. We have version 1.0, 1.1, and 1.2. I'm pretty happy with the latest version. Rabbit tractors have to have wire on the bottom to keep them from digging out. The one tractor that I have that I like the most has some shelf wire that you can't just buy off the shelf. It's made out of scraps and refrigerator panels and stuff, but
We'll have to take photos.
yeah. Stuff that we had laying around here. But in terms of what you can buy off the shelf for building rabbit tractors, you want like 2x4 fence, like 2-inch by 4-inch garden fence for the floor, so to speak, and at least 1x2 or smaller wire for the side, and roof on the top and at least one of the sides for shade, and wheels on one end are. I have one that is skis, and it works okay, but I would definitely recommend wheels. And you have to build it in such a way that when you pick up, you never want to drag a rabbit tractor because you will catch heat. And I have a couple grow outs that lost toes in the learning phase.
Oh no!
Yeah. So the learning is to pick up the tractor completely off the ground, except for the one, the far edge that is on wheels, and drag it that way. And it helps to have some finer wire or tiles or shelf near at the wheel end for the rabbits to hop onto when you move it to. Otherwise, they tend to sort of get. What's the word for it?
Their legs stuck in the hole.
So it's just uncomfortable. Like when you fall off a bicycle seat.
Yeah.
It's not very pleasant.
Pinned or stuck.
Yeah, they're kind of stuck in the hole.
Maybe talk about their feed, because you're supplementing their food with.
So the tractored rabbits are still getting pellets. I estimated that they're eating about a third of the pellets that they would without the pasture, and that's going to vary according, that's going to vary with your quality of pasture, and how much square foot of pasture they get a day per move. You can, but it's definitely a significant savings in pellets. And people have done pastured rabbits without additional pellets, but it's a lot more of a challenge. You have to breed the rabbits to sort of breed to the feed is a phrase that people use. You have to start out small and keep rabbits that save back rabbits for breeding stock that do well with whatever feed regimen you're using. with the pastured rabbits, I don't know a lot of people who are doing year-round pasture with breeding stock, especially. You know, from what I've read and experienced, it's best to keep the breeding does in cages.
That's the real learning.
And there is the real learning experience if we want to pan over to that sneezing rabbit.
Is it Penny?
It's Penny. It's always Penny.
Yeah, so we've gotten this upper respiratory infection in a lot of our breeders. That is one of the big reasons that we haven't been selling rabbits as anything other than meat. And we're working on breeding for resistance to that upper respiratory infection and getting it and trying to just get it out of the herd completely before we would start selling breeding stuff.
We have, as far as the silvopasture or agroforestry, you know, we did carry a lot of our apple and fruit tree prunings to the rabbits in the wintertime, and they would strip all that bark off, and they just love that. Cambium, really nutritious stuff for them. So it's a great resource. Yeah. Pruning's a great resource for the rabbits. So.
Yeah, that's good. So in the winter, you know, we can supplement pellets with local hay and lots of cut forage branches and brambles.
Roses. Yeah. Love multiflora rose.
Yeah.
Love
Willow,
multiflora rose.
mulberry.
Honeysuckle.
All right.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. So in lieu of time, and that was the last question anyways, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. If the Brambleberry family can hang out for a little bit, we're going to end the Facebook Live feed, and we will end the Zoom call, and we'll just debrief after. But thank you for joining, everyone, and I hope you all have a lovely evening.
Yeah.